Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Touche Football Podcast on YouTube. Not any podcast, not any normal podcast. This is a big one, and it is the start of the Premier League season. And I get all giddy about this. Like, I'm literally playing the Premier League theme like all through the day. I'm hyped about it. And yeah, it's something where I don't know. It's like for me, it's always like the end of summer as we start getting into football, and this just kicks it off, and it's like this is like again kicking off my favorite time of year. So I'm excited to get into the games and like actually have source material to get in and talk about. So Colin, how hyped are you about this upcoming season?
Very much so. I've seen a lot of talk about it, and even today, stuff up until the very last day of before the opening of the season, just so much going on, and it's really exciting and really excited to get in and cover it. So
Yeah, so there's some really big matchups, and I think like when they first came out with the slate of games, like there was some real headliners that really jumped off the page, and there's some real cool talking points about pretty much all these games. But we want to get into some of the real juicy matchups, and I think for us, I think that you got to start you can't start with anything else other than the Big Six matchup between Chelsea and Liverpool at Stamford Bridge. So I would say that's the biggest game of the season, and I'll give my thoughts on it. And I'll give you a chance. Obviously, you're the Chelsea fan, so you probably have more insight than me. But I would say that for me, I think that there's a theme around both of these teams, and in particular, I would say not just for this game, but for this season is are they back? Right, that's kind of the theme for both of these teams, at least from my perspective. And I think that these are two teams that I would say they have the highest floor and the lowest ceiling of what we could expect. I mean, maybe you put Tottenham in that conversation too now, but it's we literally saw a ceiling for Chelsea that we had never seen before, and I don't think anybody saw them ever as a bottom half team. And then we transition to this year we've got a new manager. I think we've got a lot of momentum. We've got young, talented players. We're making some important signings. They're not going to play in this game, but both teams are kind of making moves. And I think we look at both of these teams as teams that could make that leap back into the top four slash potentially title conversation if they play their cards right. So, for me, I'm looking at, are they back? That's like the theme for me. But what are your initial thoughts on this game?
I mean, yeah, I mean, you covered it great. I mean, I think that as you said, these teams are both looking to get back to what we know them as, and I think we saw it even as early as this week. I mean, we saw. I mean, I'll get into it in more depth later, but with Moises Caicedo, and Liverpool and Chelsea were both willing to spend upwards of 100 million for him. So, it just proves how much these teams are willing to get back. When I saw this game on the schedule, I knew it had to be probably definitely the biggest match of match week one. And I think this one, as much as it pains me to say this, I think Liverpool comes away with a win here.
Mm.
But I think a lot of it will be due to the knee injury that Nkunku suffered in preseason. He was a huge contributor in the preseason, and I think it'll be tough for Chelsea, a little bit more difficult to find the back of the net. And obviously, I hope and want to be proven wrong. But that's what I have in mind. I mean, also, we don't know for sure. What are these teams going to come out looking like? In terms of tactical approach,
Yeah.
formations. Even the lineups. We're not 100% sure. So it's really a question mark all around, and one that I'm really looking forward to seeing. But again, I hope to be proven wrong, but we'll find out this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, like the big thing is like you look at Chelsea across the front, and you can even look at Liverpool across the front, and they both have kind of had the same question as far as that midfield and who's going to play, because you've got some, dynamic player like Enzo Fernandez, and you ask the question who's going to play beside him, and like right now that's really been Conor Gallagher, or I don't know who's going to play that role.
Hmm.
Um, and so, we looked at a player, and you guys just made a signing, and Tyler Adams. I doubt he plays, but that I mean the question is like who's going to fill that vote, because I don't think Enzo Fernandez, a great player, can fill that on his own. So,
Hmm.
and these games are really won or lost in midfield. As that's just the way the game has kind of transitioned. And if you lose the midfield battles, a lot of times you lose possession and ultimately you lose control of the game. You know, and then I think for Liverpool, just looking at them from their perspective, it's like, we've got Van Dijk and you've got Salah. I think these are players that now we're looking at them as the veteran leaders of this team. You've got a lot of young, exciting players. I think you've got, Jones, you've got obviously Darwin Nunez, Luis Diaz. I mean, I think honestly, this is a team that I think they'll line up as a 4-3-3, but it's probably going to look more like a 3-2-5, right? And Klopp's probably just gonna load up. I just see that the way that Liverpool likely play is that he's going to go for it, and we're going to see a lot of Liverpool games this season where it's high scoring on both like scoring a lot and conceding a lot.
Hmm. I think that's always kind of been his approach. I mean,
Hmm.
he really does. I mean, even people make fun of Trent sometimes for not defending, but I mean, and you got to give him some slack. I mean, think about how high Klopp wants his outside backs to push up the field, and the front three kind of they go more central to allow the space on the flanks for the outside backs to provide crosses into the box. But as you said, that comes with its pros and cons. You score more and you also concede more. So it's always interesting to watch Liverpool. I'm sure as a Liverpool fan, that must be really entertaining to watch, having so many goals on both ends of the field.
Do you see Chelsea as more of a dynamic team this year? It's been, I mean, obviously from a neutral perspective or maybe a rival's perspective, they've always been kind of this dogged defensive team that's played, the Mourinho style and Conte style, right? These were like very defensive teams. Maybe they didn't have possession of the ball so much. And I think that honestly, if you just take last year as a complete wash, because I don't really know what the tactics look like, they were all over the place. I mean, it just seemed like they were going through the motions at times. But
Well,
now I think
yeah,
we should be
I
looking at
mean,
a dynamic team. So, what are your thoughts on how you think Pochettino's going to approach this one?
well, I think we can be dynamic enough to score more than 38 goals in the season.
That'd be a
So
start for sure. Yeah,
yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, and I mean, we saw it in preseason. I mean, obviously, preseason isn't the be all end all indicator, but I mean, we scored four against was it Brighton or New? I forgot who it was. I think it was Brighton.
It's Brighton.
Scored four goals against Brighton, and then two goals in the other two games that they played in the Premier League series. And it's just pretty much every single game we played, we scored two or more goals, and that's a testament to how Pochettino wants to play. It was very encouraging for me to see as a supporter, and yeah, no, I definitely think that this team will be more dynamic than it was last season. Even the signings we've made, we've touched on it before. I obviously Christopher Nkunku can't play at the start, but it just showed how we do want to be more dynamic. We have Nicholas Jackson, Kylo Mudryk is coming along, Raheem Sterling, a lot of these players, and Enzo Fernandez, carrying everything in the middle, and really being that anchor that we need. Having Ben Chilwell on one side and Reece James on the other, it just provides so much attacking mindset, and I think the last three managers we've had, maybe not Tuchel. I never really wanted him to leave, but certainly with Potter and Lampard, it just wasn't really utilized as it should have been. And so I
Mhm.
think that Pochettino will get the most out of it. And I certainly do think we'll be a more dynamic team this season than we were last season.
I think that both of these teams are approaching this from different perspectives as far as the fact that it's the first game of the season. And I think that if this game was played later on, you might encounter a little bit differently. Obviously, Chelsea's they're not playing any European football. We have yet to see how, invested or how far Liverpool will progress in Europa League. But I just think that the problem, and maybe they're addressing it, is that Liverpool haven't had the depth. I feel like they have a team that used to be a lot deeper. They've obviously got rid of some players and they've replaced some starting caliber players, but do they have the depth, especially if you look at the back line? Um, at the center back position, if you've got, Matip and Gomez, if those are going to be players that, are they at the level that you need to if you're going to be doing these rotations for these different games? And obviously Chelsea, they won't really have as much of that problem as they just focus primarily domestically.
Right.
So I say like I think that the fact that this is the first game of the season, we're actually gonna learn a lot about these teams as far as how well they can perform. Obviously, they're going to increase their form, but I think once they start getting into the deeper ends of these competitions, we'll see it affect them and their form in the league potentially, or at least affect their form, in these other competitions. So I think that's the fact that it's the first game of the season. In my mind, I think that adds an extra dynamic to it.
Certainly, certainly. Well, I know I know we really wanted to get to the second game that really caught our attention, and that was Newcastle and Aston Villa. Um,
Yeah,
I'll give
yeah,
my thoughts on that one. I think it's a tough one. I think both of us in the last episode had these teams finishing within a place of each other, and
mhm,
with the level both of these teams showed last year, and Villa's recent transfer push, this is a game that I'm really intrigued to see. I think both teams will come out with a lot of energy to prove to the world, really, that they need to be taken seriously, and I think Newcastle comes out on top here. That's what I think will happen. But paraphrasing what Robbie Musto said on NBC, I saw it on a reel. Newcastle last season, they looked to be the strongest, the most fit, certainly the
mhm,
most intense team in the Premier League. But now having to play in the Champions League, it might prove very difficult. For them to carry that week in and week out, having to
mhm.
play a Premier League game on the weekend and then a Champions League game midweek. That'll be hard. But obviously, they're not having to contend with that on match week one. And so
Right.
I think they'll be coming out firing on all cylinders and get the result they're looking for. So that's my opinion. But
Yeah, I think for Villa, we've got a team that they're playing obviously Europa Conference League. I think that from what I've gathered from their fan base, and I've tried to follow a little bit, particularly in the lead up to this season and this game in particular, about where their fans kind of stand. This is a very confident Villa team. And I think they have a lot of reason to be confident based off of their form to end last season and the trust and confidence that they have in Unai Emery and how he progressed the team. I think that they're very excited about what he can bring to that team. I think they have every expectation that they're going to progress very far in the Conference League. But I think that they go to St. James's Park, which is a very difficult place to play, by the way. If we
mhm,
look at Newcastle's form last season, this was a team that was hard to play at home. And we look at how they progressed through the season, and they went toe to toe. And I think we saw it. I think the last season they played Newcastle in a
mhm.
3-3 draw. And this is a game that I think number one, it's a fantastic fixture from a managerial perspective because we look at Eddie Howe, who a lot of people consider to be, a top manager in the league. And then we look at Unai Emery as another one who makes great adjustments. And I remember when he coached Villarreal and we played them in that Europa League final, he absolutely outmatched Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, which honestly, in all fairness, probably not that hard to do, but he absolutely put on a managerial masterclass, and he does that and adjusts to every opponent that he makes. He puts players in the right positions, and like I said in the last video, I honestly think that the signings that they've made are going to add an entire new dynamic to this Villa team and really progress them. I think that they should have their ambitions at an even higher European place and should be pushing for those top, even those top 5 positions. I would at least I think that Villa can achieve those heights. So interesting to hear your thoughts on them.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think that they're like I said, I think both teams, and as we've pointed out in the last episode, I think both teams will be successful this year. I think there's been a lot of investment in different ways, obviously, but with Aston Villa's transfer push this summer and what Newcastle have achieved last season and just trying to carry that momentum into this year. There's just a lot to be excited for both teams. But yeah, I mean, I think Newcastle will come out with the win there, but it could easily go both ways. Just the fact that it's in St. James Park will make it difficult for Villa, I think, as you pointed out. So
Do you think, and I'll ask this just because it's kind of how I feel, so I want to ask you, do you think that Newcastle in some ways could end up becoming a victim of their own success? I mean, I think we're looking at owners that they probably didn't anticipate Champions League football last season, right? They came into
mhm.
that maybe hoping or pushing for that. Now they've achieved it, and what it means is that they've got to basically emphasize that, right? Because it's got a higher profile tournament. So, you're going to
Right.
want to attract top talent. You're going to perform well in that tournament. So you're gonna try and play your best football in the Champions League. That's going to be demanding on the league form. Obviously Villa are also going to prioritize their European competition, but Newcastle, should they kind of taper back their expectations, or do you think they should look at this as being as a Champions League season for them?
Well, I think that with Aston Villa, they were playing in the Conference League, and a lot of those games, I think you could put out your B team and win. At least at the beginning stages of that
Mhm.
tournament. Maybe not towards the end, but even towards the end, the teams that are still there, it's just not taken as seriously as even the Europa League, and
Mhm.
certainly not the Champions League. And so I think that, as you said, for Newcastle, this is a game, or this is a tournament where they do need to perform well. I think getting out of the group stage will be something that they're going to want to do, for sure. And I think that if I were them, I would kind of put my eggs in that basket. It's the first time they've been there, um, since either the early 2000s or late 90s. I don't remember, but I know it's been over 20 years. And so,
Mhm.
I mean, this is something that's pretty massive for them. And they might be the victim of their own success, as you said, but at least domestically. But I think in terms of Europe, I think that it is important that they perform well. And that's for me. If they didn't have to contend with the Champions League, I think they're they're certainly a contender for the top four again.
Mhm.
But since they have to contend with the Champions League, that's why I had them at number 6 last episode, because it's hard to balance those two, and it's the first time that they've had to deal with it, and it'll just be a new atmosphere for them. So I think adjusting that will be difficult.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. I
yeah.
think we see eye to eye on that. So, all right, two big matchups. I'm excited to watch them. Excited to get into it. Actually, have some talking points when we get into this next week. But I'm gonna pivot a little bit different direction, kind of away from the match previews per se. Probably one of the biggest changes that we've already seen implemented, and we're seeing it right now at the Women's World Cup. I didn't watch the end, but I think I saw Spain and the Netherlands had 12 minutes of stoppage time added to the end of that game, resulted in the Netherlands scoring an equalizer. Again, don't know how that game finished because I just saw it was tied, or that it was all drawn up. But either way, we've seen anywhere from 8, 10, and sometimes excess of 10 minutes added to the end of stoppage time. We saw it in the Community Shield too.
Hmm.
So how do you think, and I wanted to ask you in particular this question because you referee, I mean, you just refereed a game yesterday.
Hmm.
And as a referee, how do you think that the referees were going to respond to that? And then I'll kind of touch on how I think maybe the teams are going to respond to that.
I mean, yeah, I think this is really interesting. You touched on the Women's World Cup. Last year in the Men's World Cup, we were introduced to those huge amounts of stoppage time, and normally it was, as you pointed out, 10, 12, and I think even at one point 14 minutes of stoppage time. And
Mhm.
and that just adds, a completely different feel, than the normal, say, 1 to 5 minutes we've seen forever in leagues around the world. I just think that, it's. I mean, I was the center ref of an adult league last night. Where a spot in the semifinal, was on the line in this tournament, and the emotion displayed in those last 10 minutes. I normally don't like giving out cards, but I had to give out a yellow and plenty of warnings. And the last 10 minutes of games can be grueling, even for the referees. And the last 10 minutes of last night's game, I ref seemed like forever. One team trying to hold the result and the other pushing to change it.
Mhm.
I think there's always that mark in the game. Usually, traditionally, if you're playing a normal game, it's 90 minutes. Where, say, you're in the 70th minute, and you're just like, okay, there's 20 more minutes to either hold the result if you're winning, to equalize or score the game-winning goal if you're losing or if you're tied. But you're not sitting around wondering how much stoppage time will be added.
Mhm.
You're just trying to reach that 90-minute point. And as I've said before, those 10, those players, they just feel like they're switching off. Once they hit
Mhm.
the 90-minute mark, it's hard after that to be still motivated to want to score more, or to want to push for that result. And having this season where you can have additionally 10 to 15 more minutes into a game, that mentality has to change. If you're at the 70th minute mark, in reality, instead of having 20 minutes, you're maybe at 30 or 35 minutes left. But I think it's necessary. And additionally, we touched on it before we even started this. I think time wasting, I think that will certainly be reduced dramatically. As did, you said, with the flopping with VAR, it just drastically reduced because, the refs are now accounting for this more deeper, more deep than they used to. And it's kind of like you said, when the players were diving in the box, and it was like, they, before they could get away with that, and now they can't because it just kind of wastes everyone's time, and additionally they'll get a yellow. So, but yeah, I think that's a factor as well. I saw a stat from, I think it was either Sky Sports or NBC Sports, showing that in the Premier League last season, the ball was only in play for an average of 53 minutes per an average per game. And that's wild if you think about it, So therefore, I mean, as weird as those seemingly ridiculously high amounts of stoppage time are, I think given those stats, I think this is something that definitely needs to be employed. It's very interesting though, and I'm curious to see how it plays out across the league.
Yeah, I think we've already seen this, in the Community Shield. We saw a lot of 8 minutes, I believe, was stoppage time was added to the end of that game. I felt like throughout the game, City seemed like they were in control. It seemed like it was City's game to lose. They definitely seemed like they were the team that was in control or in possession of the game. They hit the 90-minute mark, and then they went through the full 8 minutes, and then they had additional time added to that. I believe they conceded a goal in the 100th minute.
Right.
And from that point, completely different momentum shift. We've got a very, invigorated and energized Arsenal team, a little bit of a demoralized City team. They take that into penalties, and we saw the result. So if I was Guardiola, obviously, Community Shield, not going to lose that much sleep over that, but I would say his approach could have been shifted and say, hey, whatever we got to do to minimize the amount of stoppage time so that we control. Obviously, we look at teams like Liverpool, City, even United. These teams like to have a lot of energy, press. It's a high intensity game, and then we see if they play that way through 90 minutes, they're definitely not going to have the legs for an additional 11 minutes of stoppage time added on a weekly basis and have that kind of carry itself further into the season. So you're going to have to see adjustments that are made. I think we'll see them. And if I was a manager at one of these top level teams, I would say whatever we need to do to get the result over the line. It's like one of these things where if the game's 1-1 and we're going into the 90th minute, yeah, we might see 10, 12 minutes of stoppage time. If we have a 3-0 result, we're probably not getting that, right? Because we're probably just going to, the referee, maybe he's going to award what's required, but there's not going to be all that tension that's built up to it, and you can kind of relax a little bit more. So I would see teams trying to emphasize maximizing the 90 minutes they have, not really time wasting, making the most of the time they have, and then pivoting on to bigger and better things so that they're not wasting those times. But that's how I see it. And like I said, I think that they'll just adjust in the similar way like they did when we implemented VAR. We're just going to have less, players flopping. You have less time wasting. I think it's a direct correlation that we see teams adjust to the rules that are made, and that's what I think will happen. So, but it's very interesting. I think it's going to be a key talking point that we're going to see play out in some big game or bigger games in at some point in the season. So, there's been a lot of things that have happened since we had the last podcast. It seems like there's been some like jaw-dropping news around world football. So was there anything that really stuck out to you, like you want to touch on, that happened between we made predictions like 3 days ago, and I feel like I'm already ready to change them based off of some of the big moves that have already happened. So what are some of those that stuck out to you?
Well, there's the Harry Kane one for sure.
Yeah. Start right there. Yeah.
That's huge. I did not foresee that coming at all. Like and even this morning, because there was a lot of talk about how Bayern and Tottenham had maybe reached an agreement, but it was like a lot of the websites I've been reading that this morning were like,
Is he
"Oh,
even going to do it? Yeah. Is
is
he
he even
even
going
going
to
to
do it?
go?
He's probably not going to do it." So I didn't foresee it happening. And even you said in the previous episode you didn't think it was going to happen.
Mm-mm.
Um, and now it's just like it all kind of changed. I mean, I came home and it was like, oh wow, actually he has reached that agreement. So I do think that changes the whole dynamic of this Tottenham team. Um, and yeah, I mean, obviously, different things can happen. I mean, I thought as I mean, I gave my prediction and said they were going to be in 12th. Um, but I think that was, like I said, that was based on the premise that he stayed. And when we made that episode, I thought that he would leave. And then as early as this morning, I didn't. So, but obviously, what happened, and now, I mean, we'll see what happens. You're going to have certain players step up into that role. Who's really is Richarlison going to be that guy? Is Hwang Min Son going to be that guy? So there's really got to be someone who steps into that role of, I mean, maybe not scoring 30 goals in a season like Kane did last year, but
Mm-hmm.
there's got to be a main scorer in this team, and I just don't really see that happening. I think that'll be tough for Tottenham to deal with. So we'll see what happens.
I think it really boosts the chances of that Marcus Rashford top goal scorer. It's like, he's got a boost now. Harry Kane's gone, so it's him and Erling Haaland at this point, right? So no, either way, I think it's big. It's big news not just for Tottenham, but it's big news for the league.
Hmm.
Um, how yeah, how if I was Ange and I was the new manager of Tottenham, and I've gone through training, and we just saw Harry Kane score 4 goals in a preseason game, and now we're taking that player out of the team. I would be like, "Where's the refund? Can I get my, like what? Like this isn't what I signed up for, right?" So how he manages these players through this, it's going to be a very seismic shift because I mean, I think Tottenham is losing their identity. I mean, he's truly the identity of that team. I mean, Pep Guardiola literally referred to them as the Harry Kane team, right? So when we remove him, who's going to step up? Like, is it going to be Son? He can't have another bad year. You got to play
Hmm.
Richarlison. Is he going to step up like he needs to? It's just going to be a big change for Tottenham, but it's also going to be a big change because it may open the door for a team that maybe we're not suspecting to kind of fill that void. Maybe you're looking at a Brentford, and that's a game that's happening this weekend too, right? Brentford Spurs. How are these teams going to kind of step in? Is Tottenham going to concede? Like it's just going to be very interesting to follow them throughout the rest of the year. So I think that's a big move
Well,
for me. The
also,
Yeah, go ahead.
also,
Sorry.
um, maybe even bigger than Kane leaving Spurs is that he signed a lifelong deal with Skechers.
Yeah, that's an L. I wouldn't say that's the leader of athletic footwear. Absolutely not. No, no. Um, for me, the big news that really happened in was the Thibaut Courtois ACL injury. Um,
Yeah.
this is a team in Real Madrid that we just said was our favorites for the Champions League this season. And
Hmm.
now you've got a player that without him last season, I think Man City scored 7, right? I mean, he was absolutely massive for them 2 years ago in the Champions League. He was also massive for them last season. And not having him for the whole season, I mean, that's going to be a big loss for a team that I think is ready to take that next step to getting back to where they want to go. For me, it's really interesting. I know there's a free agent goalkeeper on the market right now that played 12 years at Manchester United, Spanish international. Um, I think that I saw that, there's several credible journalists that said that Real Madrid have already reached out to David De Gea. I think I would not be surprised if I see David De Gea go to Real Madrid. The question is, I think they have Andrea Lunin. I'd never heard or seen of this guy in my life. Ukrainian backup goalkeeper for Real Madrid.
Hmm.
I cannot imagine them entrusting the level of expectation that team has and understanding, how their president likes to run things. I don't see them entrusting their backup goalkeeper with this season. So they'll
No.
absolutely dip into the in the goalkeeper market. But anyways, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's crazy, and obviously that's an understatement for sure. So I mean, you mentioned David De Gea. You know, I know there's other guys that they've looked at. I haven't done a ton of research on it, but I know that even guys like Keylor Navas, I heard is on the radar, which is,
Mhm.
you know, that's, I mean, we haven't really heard of him and doing something significant in a while, and so it
No, I think
really
he was
does.
filling in at Nottingham Forest last year for Dean Henderson. So it's been a while
Right.
since we heard from Keylor Navas. Yeah.
So I mean, there's and that's, you know, there's a lot of I think that definitely is a thorn in the side of their Champions League hopes. I mean, obviously, and domestically as well in La Liga. I think that's huge. I mean, we've seen success in the Champions League, but I mean, you pointed it out with City and how City possibly could have scored, you know, upwards of up to 7 goals last when they played them, and really, I mean, even as a Chelsea fan, you know, with the struggling season we had, at one point I think we were 11th, but we were top 8 in Europe, and it was like a joke.
Hmm.
And I remember we went against Real Madrid, and it was 2-0 in both matches, so 4-0 aggregate. And I just remember it was like we had chances to score. Like, it's not like, I mean, Real Madrid obviously won 4-0, but like there were certainly chances we should have scored. I mean, I remember um Mason Mount had a chance, like a really good chance, and so did N'Golo Kante. I think he had two.
I
There was
remember the
just a lot.
Conte one particularly. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was just a lot of them. It was just so many, or a lot of chances we really should have scored. I mean, I in both games really. And so yeah, I think that that'll be huge. I think, and Courtois really was pivotal in keeping the result, at keeping the clean sheet in both games, because really Chelsea should have scored at least, I think, 3 goals in that whole tie. You know, I think realistically, but you know, I think it was massive how pivotal Courtois was in that team, and so I think this year, I think that I don't know if I changed my prediction about who would win the Champions League. Um, I have to do some thinking on that. Do some deeper digging, but you know, I think that'll be huge, and so definitely got to give some thought as to who will win the champ. In my mind, who do I think will win the Champions League? So interesting to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, yeah, I think that if I was a Barcelona fan, I'd be very happy. I'd be very happy right now. But any other transfer news stick out to you? I know there was some other big moves that
Well,
happened.
yeah, there was we touched on it earlier with Moises Caicedo and how he's set to join
Hmm.
Liverpool. I mean, that's huge, and it's sad for me. I mean, I wanted him to come to Chelsea. I thought he would work great with Enzo Fernandez, play alongside him. Um, and so, but you know, I mean, bringing him in, you know, along with McAllister, and I think it's a brilliant effort to try and replicate the Brighton midfield that carried them
Hmm.
to their success last season. You know, there's a lot of talk about Liverpool needing a defensive midfielder, and now they have that. So is this the move that was needed to make my prediction of Liverpool winning the league a reality? You know,
No,
we'll have to see.
no, it won't happen. I think I mean I'm invested personally in the Harry Maguire. I think
Hmm.
terms agreed with West Ham. Honestly, all jokes aside, it would be a big pickup it would be good for all parties. I think it would be great for all
Hmm.
parties. I think that West Ham really need some investment. They've got a lot of money. Obviously, they've lost Declan Rice. I'm not saying that Harry Maguire is going to replace Declan Rice by no means, but I think that a change of scenery could do Harry Maguire really good. I think we see this is a player that does really well whenever he plays for England and doesn't play so well for us. So, I don't know if it's it's just a bad match, a bad
Hmm.
marriage. And if I think at West Ham, that'd be a great move for him. I'm not, I mean, David Moyes is a manager that, he's not really, at least lately, hasn't really the best at like nurturing young players. So I think investing some veteran leadership into the team could do wonders for them. Um, yeah, that was a big one that stuck out to me. So I think David Raya to Arsenal.
Mm.
What happens with him and Ramsdale? That's going to be really interesting to follow and watch. I heard a lot of Arsenal fans are really high on Ramsdale last year, but do you plug in Raya now? Is he the guy? So I think that's an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, we touched on that one, and you said how you know, it'll be interesting to see because if you're spending that much money, you're not spending that much money on a backup keeper. So
Mm-mm.
I think it'll be really interesting to see it. I mean, obviously, I think it's too soon to say he'll be the starter in match week 1 because he just just joined. So it probably won't be in the first week, but as the season progresses, who will be that starter will be really interesting. So excited to see that, and really all these other transfers. As you said, this week has been really crazy. And it's still there's more craziness to come. So
Yep. I think Fabrizio said he's not sleeping.
nope,
He's
he's on
not
a
sleeping.
plane. I was on his live.
All right. So all that aside, we're gonna get into the games. We're gonna watch them. We're gonna have a lot to talk about when we get around to this next podcast. But every week for this season, we're gonna take 3 games. We'll pick the results and we'll pick the score line. And we'll pick the result. We'll predict the score line. If you get the result right and you get the score line right, you get 3 points. If you get just the result right, you get 1. If you don't get the result right, you get nothing. I'll pick my 3. You pick your 3. We'll do it every week and we'll tally them up and we'll see who wins at the end of the season. Sound good?
Yep. And
Uh,
and obviously you said we do 2 of the same and then 1 different.
Yeah, so we'll do 2 of the same team. So we'll pick the same 2 games and then we'll pick our own wild card of what we think is going to happen. All right. You ready to hear mine?
All right.
All
Go
right.
forward.
All right. Liverpool, Chelsea. I'm going for Liverpool. I say 3-2. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think you're going to see dynamic play. I think that Pochettino, it's not going to walk away from this result and be disappointed. I think if you're a Chelsea fan, you're going to see a lot of good things in this game. But I think that it's always unpredictable with Liverpool. But I think there was a couple years ago they played Arsenal in a season opener that was 4-3. They just go for it. They hit the ground running. Usually Liverpool, they last season was a little of a blip. Obviously, they didn't start so great. I think they started the season with 3 consecutive drop points. But either way, I have Liverpool winning this one.
Well, I have Liverpool winning as well. And I don't have a winning 3-2, but I do have a winning 2-1. So we do have that. I do think it'll be a close game, and it'll be very, very fun to watch, but I don't think it'll be as entertaining as maybe you do, but we'll see how it all pans out. Who's your second one?
All right, Newcastle Villa. Villa are gonna go in. They're gonna win 2-1. I think this is a confident Villa team. They've done a lot. I think that their summer has been great, and I don't think they're done. I think Unai Emery is just a coach that's they're firing all cylinders. They're excited. They're confident. I think they go to St. James's Park and they pick up a W. And yeah, I think that they're going to shock a lot of people this year.
I think you're right with the transfer that window that they've had and how much success they've had in it. I just don't see that Villa team gelling as well as we think they will at the beginning. I think this will be something that definitely will take maybe a week or two to really implement that camaraderie as a team and to really come together as a unit. And so I don't think they'll come out. Obviously, they're going to come out with energy and anticipation, but I think Newcastle comes out on top 3-2. So we have those score lines mixed up from Chelsea and Liverpool and Newcastle Villa. So, and obviously the results are different. So see how it all pans out. I'll do my third. Mine is Burnley and Manchester City, and I think that I think it's really really interesting because this is a Burnley team. I think that in the past this has been a Burnley team that just sits in and defends. When with Vincent Company, I think the big question to ask is it going to be the same Burnley that just sat around and defended, or is this going to be the team that demonstrated in the championship, a version of that team that shows their lethal ability on the counterattack and a willingness to want to play on the front foot. I think that's huge, and I think it'll be really interesting to see. So I think since they're coming out, I think they're going to come out with a lot of energy and try to match City's level. Obviously, they won't be able to with talent necessarily, but I do think that Burnley will try to come out on the front foot in some ways, try to play off the counter and not just sit in and defend and try to hold a 0-0. I think that I predict a 3-1 City win, but I do think Burnley will get a goal. And so I think it'll be really fun to watch, just in the fact that there's been talk this week and really a lot of build up for this match week 1 with Vincent Company and his former manager Pep Guardiola facing each other on the touchline. So as we said last episode, it's really exciting to see.
We'll find out tomorrow afternoon, and that's exciting to say. Mine might shock you a little bit. I'm going for Arsenal, Nottingham Forest, 4-1. 4-1 Arsenal win, 4-1 over Nottingham Forest at the Emirates. This is an Arsenal team. They have a lot of expectations. They have a lot of pressure, and they're playing at home. And we saw the form at the Emirates last season. This is a team that they just dominated at home. They were almost unplayable at home, and it was one of those seasons where when they played the small teams you're supposed to beat, it usually wasn't close. Now, the question is whether we're going to see the Arsenal from, probably 70-80% of last season, or are we going to get the Arsenal from the last 20% of last season, where they were probably dropping more points than they should have. But again, there's a lot of energy, a lot of focus. I think Arteta had them ready to go out of the gates. They've got more expectation and pressure than they had last season. But I mean, there's just, there's a lot of question marks right now, I think, around Nottingham Forest. And I think that they're going to go into a really hostile environment and come out, kind of getting a little bit of a spanking. So I say 4-1 Arsenal. And that wraps it up. That wraps everything up. You got a big week ahead of you, man. You got a really big week ahead of you. This is the last podcast from the house, right?
Yep. I think I'm going to take this computer to college. It's a little weird because before this episode we were having some connection problems, so I had to switch to this computer, which I'm probably going to use for the first week in college. And
it's miles better than what it was. Trust me.
The connection is way better, I will say, but I kind of look dead, kind of look like a ghost. So maybe we'll do some work on the lighting.
Can't win every battle, man. You can't win every battle.
No, you can. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I will come to the start of school. I think I get a MacBook Pro, so I think that'll be a lot better. I think that'll be better, and I think that'll be better in all areas. I think it'll be better. So excited for that. But yeah, really just excited for college. I mean, that'll be huge. So a lot of changes moving forward.
Good luck. Make sure you pack all those essentials, man. Like moving to college is going to college is no big deal, or is no small deal. It is a big deal. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It is a big deal. Take it seriously. Honestly, I'm excited, and I'm sure you're ready to get your whole setup and get your feet wet over there with Grove City and the soccer team there. So, big week ahead, and I look forward to hearing you from the pod. Anything else you have before we close it out?
No, that's all.
All right,
excited for the games this weekend.
I'm extremely excited for the games this weekend. There's even NFL preseason if you care about that. I don't. I'm really not going to care that much about preseason. But either way,
tomorrow.
You've got got Commanders game tomorrow. I'm probably not going to watch it. But either way, I think if you're excited, you've waited all through the summer. We've got all the transfers. These teams look different. They're ready. Everybody's built them up. Everybody's made their predictions, and now it's time to get the show on the road. So super excited to get into this weekend. We'll get into the source material when we do our review/preview of Match Week 2 next week. So stay tuned for that. If you made it to the end of this video, we owe you a soda. Thanks so much. We'll see you in the next one.